Who did you report to directly? I know you mentioned you had a story about that person.
Yeah, his name was Bill. Bill Dumas, actually. I'll give
Hmm.
you his full name. He doesn't work there anymore.
Yep.
He was in charge of all the advertising.
Okay.
Good guy. Found out he was doing, some things that weren't really legit, so to speak.
So
But
now
yeah,
I know you mentioned there was a lawsuit about him or something like that.
there was a lawsuit. I don't want to get into too much
Okay, that's
details
fair.
on that, but
Fine.
anybody could Google, Beckett versus Bill Dumas and do their
Fair
due
enough.
diligence there. The only thing I've ever saw with him. So magazines were being traded with a big card company who's also in Texas. That's something you can easily find out the name of that big card company. There's only three, right? Or four. And actually two of them magazines were being traded for sealed product, just under the table. And I would participated in it at the time, and I hate to say it, I just didn't know like that's what was going on. We would bring them magazines, and then we'd get some sealed product in return. So take that for what it is.
Okay. How often did you interact with graders at Beckett, and like in what context? Did you meet them in the hallways? Did you talk to them? How
Yeah, I
often?
mean it's all one building. It was all one floor. We're all on the same floor. They have a separate room where you need, credentials and access on your key fob to get in there. I did not have the access into that room. I
Got
was
it.
in that room frequently, interacting with the graders. We ate lunch together anytime. We did a trade show. We were all there together. Graders would be behind us. We would be in the front. So I'd be kind of the face, where we would sell the magazines, and then next to our table where we would have the magazines would be where you could submit your cards for grading
Got
right
it.
next to us. So
Okay.
yeah, we still have friends there. So I hope
Good.
they're not
Yeah.
mad at me.
Now, when you were among the graders, what was the general mood back then? Were they kind of like, were they frustrated, overwhelmed, confident? Did they like the job? How was the vibe?
I mean, it was mixed. I would say they were a little arrogant, to be honest. Some of them were a little arrogant, like, hey, I'm a grader. They thought they were little big shots. But I will say they work hard. A lot of them are overworked,
Hmm.
a little frustration. But again, I mean, they hold people's money in their hands, and I think that's maybe where the arrogance came from a little bit.
Interesting. Yeah, they have high, they're spending seconds on a card that
Yeah.
is got a high value. And I mean, you weren't a grader, but I know when I interviewed the guy from PSA, he said they spent seconds on a card.
Yeah.
Does that kind of jive with what you saw at Beckett too?
Yeah, pretty much. I had a friend who actually took the interview and did a grading test, and basically they give you a couple cards. They want your opinion on grading. You have to do it fast. They would give you a real Jordan and a fake Jordan. They would say which one is real, which one is fake, as part of the interviewing process for a grader. They did actually they kind of didn't want people in the hobby, so to speak. They wanted people with good eyes, but I think they had like this thing like where if people came from the hobby, they were a little worried, people would do, unscrupulous things.
Mhm.
But it was a good mix. I mean, most of the guys there, if they weren't in the hobby before they started, they got into it, just, seeing those dollars and all that stuff.
Right. Did it feel like more of an assembly line or more of like a slow craft, the grading? Like which one was it more towards?
I think it was more of like an assembly line. You know, everything was anonymous. I will say that. Like they wouldn't know who was submitting. Supposedly they wouldn't know. Everything would get like a number or a barcode where, it remained anonymous as to who the order was for. So they tried to, keep it kind of impartial that way. For me as an employee, we had it the worst. Like our stuff when we submitted it would go to the back of the line. So um,
Interesting.
yeah, they wouldn't play favorites that way.
That's good. That
That's
makes me
cool.
feel
Yeah,
better.
that was actually one of the good things.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that you didn't like about the grading or stories you may have heard, or maybe not stories, but like something you can actually confirm that you didn't like that happened?
Yeah, so I mean, I saw graders take money under the table at shows for cards. for grading. Yeah,
All
some
right, let's talk about that for 1 second. Let's start with that one. So this is a pretty serious thing. What show would you be talking about? Like a regional show that Beckett might be at, like the Philly show or a Dallas card show or a national?
Actually, it was at the Beckett headquarters. They would do a show like quarterly at Beckett. So local people would come in, and there's some pretty big local dealers. This was in Dallas, Texas, in the area. And yeah, I saw money exchanged under the table. And I mean, the graders saw me see them, and I kind of looked the other way at the time. It is what it is.
And what do you think this money was for? Better grades or better speed or both? You don't know.
Possibly both. I can't
It wasn't
comment.
like a $20 tip, like you give to the postman at Christmas time or something like
I
that.
don't know how much it was, but I definitely saw the cash go under the table, exchange from one hand to the other. And it was a senior grader too, the first time I saw it. I think that person is still there. I'm not too sure.
All right.
Uh,
We're not going to name names there,
no,
but
we're not going to name names. No.
okay, that's concerning. What else didn't make you feel good?
Well, just like the whole way the organization was run. So I don't know if you know this, but at the time they were owned by a company called Eli Global, which is a private equity investment firm, and they were based overseas. They were based out of India. So like anytime we had corporate meetings, everybody, if you're an advertiser or you did the pricing or if you were a grader, everybody would be in the same room. We would do a Zoom call. Where they would speak to everybody. So, but funny things are like they would put pictures of like Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Derek Jeter, Tiger Woods, guys you should know, and they would ask the people in India, which is mostly like the customer service and the web developers. They'd be like, "Who's this person?" And they'd put up a picture of Tiger Woods, and they would say like Denzel Washington. They would have no clue who these people were, and it makes you think like, how do these people work for a company like Beckett? That they don't know anything about sports. So it was a little eyebrow raising. It was, yeah, it was definitely a little strange to see stuff like that go on in such a
Okay,
big company.
so they were basically disconnected from collecting in a way. They didn't know
They
very
really know
iconic
nothing about,
athletes and
yeah.
okay.
They didn't know anything about the hobby. They don't know anything about sports. They're kind of just there to do their job. You know what I mean? And their job was customer service. So, and that I know that's a frustration that a lot of people had was with the customer service. So there was two customer service centers. One was India, and then one was the Philippines. And it's just cheap labor. A lot of companies
Yeah.
do it. The company I work
Yep.
for now does it. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the difference is, where I work now, the people that are overseas, they know about the business.